Great to have you with us today. No gibberish, no nonsense. We're live today at your nation's capital. Corey Lewandowski, National, International, Milky Way headquarters at the embassy. Corey is with us here. That's our studio right here in Washington, D.C. by the Capitol. Great to have you with us. No gibberish and no nonsense coming your way. And before I get started, I want to thank all of our new listeners from around the country and around the globe today. One thing I want you to do, you got to do this, got to buy Corey's book because it is so cool. And if you don't read it, you're going to be like, oh man, I can't believe I didn't read that book. You can get it at B. Dalton, Amazon. If you don't like them, your favorite bookstore. Let Trump Beat Trump. Great summer read. In fact, I read it 2 times. The second time was even better than the first time. Great book, Let Trump Beat Trump. And Corey's with us now. Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager, Donald Trump for president campaign, in his own office with me at our headquarters. Great to have you.
Hey, John. How are you this morning?
It's great to be at the embassy here, Corey, as always. People are always very intrigued about this. And, of course, now since we've been broke into, I do lock the door now when I come in at 5:30 a.m., which I didn't do the other time, so I'm sorry for that. Let's get to tonight. You're going to a big rally with the president in Tampa. You're flying on Air Force One. This thing is going to be packed. I've heard that it's going to be one of the biggest rallies they've had, overflowing crowds. They can't even handle the people they got coming in. Plus, Florida, a big state. You got Governor Scott running for U.S. Senate. He's got the lead there. You got a governor's race. I bet you're really excited about tonight.
Well, Florida, as you know, is really the president's second home. It's where he spends a lot of his time. It's a state that delivered enormous numbers in the primary, where he won almost every county in what was a very contested Republican primary. When he was running for president, he won the state of Florida overwhelmingly. Well, look, almost 2% when they said it couldn't be done. And now he's going back down there and he's weighing in to a race for the governor because Ron DeSantis, who's a member of Congress, has been a person fighting the president's agenda every single day here in Washington. This president supported him early last December, tweeted about him again in June, and is going to Tampa tonight to do a rally to remind the people of Florida that there is a clear difference when it comes to candidates who support the president and those who don't support the president. And President Trump is going down there to tell the people of Florida of the accomplishments he's achieved since he's been in office, but also asking them to support Governor Rick Scott for the U.S. Senate and Congressman Ron DeSantis for the governor's race.
Well, DeSantis has been an advocate of the president. He's been an enthusiastic supporter of his policies, running for governor there against Adam Putnam, who's the agriculture commissioner. That's really not done much. Now, we've seen, Corey, what happens when the president weighs in. I mean, you go to the Georgia governor's race, 2 pretty solid conservatives, and Brian Kemp, the Secretary of State, and Casey Cagle, who was a 16-year lieutenant governor. At the last minute, the vice president and then the president weighing in for Brian Kemp in the final days, and they had a 40-point swing in the polls and the election in 3 days. Corey, that's unheard of. Cagle had the lead the entire time up to the final 3 days, and then he gets beat by 40 points. I mean, you can't underestimate the power of the president with his backing in the Republican Party as a.
And John, you have to remember the Republicans by and large are supporting this president, his agenda, with over 90%. It is historic numbers.
Unheard of.
Nobody, not Barack Obama, not Bill Clinton from their parties, nobody has received the type of support from the base, if you will, from any president. Donald Trump has come in, so his endorsements are so important. Look, it is very easy to argue that Ron DeSantis was going to lose that race if he didn't get endorsed by the president. Adam Putnam, when he announced he was going to run for governor, everybody just assumed it was his race to win. Now that Donald Trump has come in and supported Congressman DeSantis, it looks to be very clear that if the election were held today, Ron would be the Republican nominee for governor moving forward. That is the power of the Trump endorsement. We've seen it in South Carolina with Katie Arrington, who challenged an incumbent Republican Congressman, Mark Sanford, who was against the president's agenda. This is the power of the Trump endorsement. It is the power of the Republicans who are so happy with the agenda of smaller government, lower taxes, less regulation, great federal judges, 2 potential Supreme Court justices now before the end of this year that he'll have the opportunity to get through Congress, and so many other things, great trade deals for the United States for a change. This is why the Republicans are supporting this president with over 90% on a regular basis.
Which has been unprecedented. I mean, to get that level of support from the Republicans. Let's get to the Mueller situation now, and more, I guess you can call it nonsense, coming out of Michael Cohen. Yesterday, Rudy Giuliani on CNN, I didn't think he did a very good job, to be honest. I couldn't really follow what he was saying. But Michael Cohen now saying that the president was aware of the fact that they had this meeting in Trump Tower with an official from the Russian government or an oligarch or a lawyer where they said they didn't have it, but he didn't have it on tape. He can't corroborate it. What is the deal with this guy?
Look, I can tell you this, John, because I was there at the time that meeting transpired, okay? I was still running the campaign. And what I know is I knew nothing about the meeting. And if Donald Trump, as candidate Trump, would have been made aware that meeting was transpiring, he would have turned to me and said to me, hey, Corey, what do you think of this? He and I never had that conversation, which leads me to believe he was never told that this meeting transpired either beforehand or afterwards, and only found out about it through the public records, which is what has been now said. Michael Cohen clearly has an axe to grind against this man, which I don't understand why. Michael used the president to enrich himself. We've seen this now, that he went to these major corporations, whether it was Novartis or AT&T or so many others, and said, you will pay me, I will have access to the president. And what we've seen across the board is Michael did nothing for these companies. He locked them into contracts. He made a lot of money. And what he's being investigated for from the Southern District of New York is probably for tax evasion, wire fraud, mail fraud, something of that nature. So he is trying to cover himself by trying to go after the president for things which we know are not true. And I don't understand, because this is a man who not that long ago said, I would take a bullet for Donald Trump. Well, all of a sudden, he's in a jam because he didn't follow the rules, and now he wants to blame somebody else for it. This is why nobody ever trusted Michael Cohen when they worked with him.
We're with Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager for the Donald Trump for President campaign. It is 46 past the hour. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Corey, this is interesting now. You were the campaign manager at the time that meeting took place. You were very close to the president as campaign manager. You talked to him throughout almost every single day. Manafort, who was at the meeting, he was in charge of hunting of the delegate situation. He was not running the day-to-day operations of the campaign, right? So he had a very different role at that time. So wouldn't it stand to reason if the president did know about a meeting that would have had to do with his campaign, not with selecting national delegates from Colorado, which ostensibly was Manafort's job when he came in. He didn't do a very good job there either, by the way. But it's really inconceivable, being that I talk to you several times a week during the whole campaign, it's inconceivable to me that the president would have come to you and said, what do you think of this meeting? Or I need you to be there, or I'm going to the meeting at 2 p.m. or whatever, or I've approved the meeting. It's inconceivable to me that you wouldn't not have been brought in on that loop, because he ran all that stuff by you 100% of the time, did he?
Well, he did, John, and I'll tell you, it wasn't just Corey Lewandowski, but, the other people who were around the candidate at the time, Hope Hicks, Dan Scavino, Keith Schiller, the people who really made up the core of the team, Michael Glassner, right? None of us, to the best of my knowledge, were ever made aware of the meeting, and we were doing direct, daily, multiple times a day communication with candidate Trump. Never, to the best of my knowledge, did he ever say to any of us who were involved in the decision-making of the campaign, do you think this meeting should occur? And that tells me that he was never made aware of the meeting. He never gave permission to have the meeting occur. And look, Michael Cohen was never part of the campaign. He tried to be part of the campaign, but nobody wanted him to be part of the campaign. And so he was ostracized for a lot of reasons, because everything he touched was basically a disaster. So his office was on the 26th floor. The campaign was run on the 5th floor of Trump Tower, sometimes on the 14th floor of Trump Tower. But Michael had no formal role in the campaign. So for him to intimate or to state unequivocally that the president was made aware of something that had to do with the campaign that Michael would have known about, I think is just a fallacy, because if the president president would have been made aware of this, the candidate would have been made aware of it, he would have brought that to my attention, to Hope's attention, to Dan Scavino's attention, to somebody who was a decision maker at the campaign on a regular basis, and we would have been notified. And that never occurred, to the best of my knowledge. So I find it very difficult to believe that Michael was made aware of this ahead of time. And now, only months later, when Michael is in legal jeopardy, has decided to bring out a story which is no way to corroborate or to prove. And so now you're forced to disprove a negative. And I think it's very unfair to the president.
Coupled with the fact that he was not officially part of the campaign, so why would he even have knowledge of it? I guess that's my question.
Well, it's a great point.
He was not the campaign lawyer either, so why would he even have knowledge of it?
Look, I don't think he did, is my point, John. So, I think Michael is trying to rewrite history. The campaign attorney who would have been looped into this if a discussion would have happened was Don McGahn, and now he's the White House counsel. I have not spoken to Don about this issue, but I don't think he was ever made aware of a potential meeting. And so, look, that meeting that transpired was for a very small period of time with a very select group of people, and to the best of my knowledge, candidate Trump was not made aware of the meeting prior to the meeting and not made aware of the meeting post the meeting. And to the best of my knowledge, he's never met with the individuals who were part of that meeting. The campaign leadership was never part of that. Paul Manafort attended that meeting. Don Jr. attended the meeting. But look, I don't know why Michael Cohen would have anything to do with the meeting. It had nothing to do with Trump Tower business. He had nothing to do with the campaign. He was never a member of the campaign. He never provided legal counsel to the campaign. So I don't know. But now what Michael is saying is you have to disprove a negative. I know that Donald Trump knew that is what he's saying, and now it's impossible to go back. But what we have seen from Michael is he has lied for his own benefit time and time and time again, and that's a pattern that I think is going to continue to move forward with.
But unequivocally, Corey Lewandowski had no knowledge of this meeting.
The first time I was ever made aware of this meeting, John, was when the public record came out sometime, I think, in June or July of last year that this meeting actually transpired. I never knew about it.
So it's very difficult, having talked to you so many times a week during the campaign. It's inconceivable to me that the president, then candidate Trump, would have been aware of this meeting and you wouldn't have. It's inconceivable to me, or Hope, or Dan, or all of them. And no one was, and it just comes out of the blue. I don't buy it.
I don't either, and that's why I have to call into question Michael's statements once again, right? What we've seen from Michael now is a continuous pattern of doing things that are benefiting himself, whether it's enriching himself by trying to profiteer off of his relationship with the president, telling companies that he could go and get things done for them, acquiring these massive contracts of, hundreds of thousands or in some cases millions of dollars to tell companies that they need to pay him so he can get things done. Look, Michael did things that profited and benefited Michael Cohen that weren't helpful to the campaign, that weren't helpful to the president, he's now in trouble for and will have to answer for to the Southern District of New York. But I was never made aware of the meeting. I find it impossible to believe that then candidate Trump told Michael ahead of time, yes, not only do I know about the meeting, but I'm aware of it and I want to go forward. I just don't believe that, because Michael was not involved in the day-to-day operations of the campaign at all.
You're on the John Frederick Radio Network, trucking the truth across America, live in Washington, D.C. We're with Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager, Donald Trump for president. Also, read Corey's book, Let Trump Be Trump. You can get it at your favorite bookstore or Amazon. Corey, let's get to the economy. 4.1% GDP growth on Friday. It wasn't long ago that we were told by President Obama and Democrats and economists that the New World economy had the U.S. at a 1% growth in perpetuity, that we just have to accept it, kind of like Jimmy Carter when he said, put a sweater on. That is what it is. Now we're getting 4% growth. It could get higher. We've got record employment, record low unemployment, more jobs today than applicants, another 600,000 people entering the job market that had stopped looking for work. The Trump economy and Trumponomics. How do the Democrats even argue with the success that we've had?
Well, John, you have to remember, it's not just the Democrats who are arguing. It's the never-Trumpers, the haters, who, when he was a candidate and he said, I can get the economy growing again, give me an opportunity, we'll get to 4%. Most major media outlets, from the Huffington Post to the Washington Post to all of these outlets, the New York Times said, this is a fallacy. It's a farce. There's no way he can do it. It will never happen. 1.2% is the new normal. We've seen the Never Trumpers just recently writing publications, writing articles saying that this has nothing to do with the tax cuts that this president's put in place. This is actually a holdover from the Obama administration. These guys live in a fantasy world. What this president does and what he has been able to do for the last year and a half is create an environment for businesses to look long-term and say, I'm willing to reinvest in capital improvement projects again. I'm willing to make major purchases. I'm willing to hire more people. I'm willing to expand my business because they see that the direction of the country is something that is America first. It's buy America, hire American, right? That's what this president has talked about. And so if you're a chief executive officer or you're a small business owner and you're trying to look a year down the road or 2 years down the road, you're asking yourself, is this a good time to reinvest in my company? Because under the Obama years, when you were barely surviving, when you had to go out and take out loans on your credit cards because you couldn't get a bank loan, right? Those days are over. Banks want to lend money now. The housing market is still booming. Right. The stock market is booming. And people are saying, hey, I've got more disposable income today than I did a year ago or 2 years ago. Let's reinvest that in my business. Let's hire more people. Let's take a chance. Let's start a new business. That is what this presidency has created. And you couple that with the deregulation, and I mean by cutting government bureaucracy on small businesses who are just getting crushed, and you see this economy taking off like no one expected, and that's a tribute to what this president has done and the sheer will of his power to move the economy in the right direction.
And so as a result of that, we've got a very tight House races coming up. Some are predicting that the Democrats are going to win in a blue wave. People like me are saying I think the Republicans are going to hang on by maybe 2 or 3. Every week it changes. How do you see it now?
So, John, again, we go back to the 41 open seats that the Republicans have to defend because we've got a number of members of Congress who are retiring. Then we look at some of the districts like Barbara Comstock in Northern Virginia, which is a seat that the Democrats have targeted, and others. Again, if the election were held today, I think we're literally at a coin flip. The economy continues to improve. We see a growth like 4.1%. That fires up the Republican base to say we need to keep Republicans in Congress to work to cut taxes because not one Democrat in this country voted for the president's tax cuts.
Right.
We've seen the president say just last week he wants to have tax cuts 2.0 in place soon. That's important. And if we can get those things done, then the Republicans deserve the opportunity to come back in the majority. But let me say, John, this president has also said immigration is a priority. I want the money to fund the wall. We have to stop illegals from coming into the country, and we have to have a strong national security. That also has to occur. So as voters go to the ballot box, they're going to have a great opportunity this November, and they're going to have the opportunity to vote for socialist Democrats who think that everything should be free. The redistribution of wealth is where they want to go.
Right.
Or they can vote with the Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi wing of the Democratic Party. Or they can return back to Congress those conservatives who are saying, we want you to be able to control more of your money. We're going to make sure national security is a priority. And if this election is about Donald Trump on the ballot, then the Republicans hold the House and they expand their majorities in the Senate.
I think you're absolutely right. Let's get to 2 races. Florida, Rick Scott, incumbent, former astronaut, Democrat Bill Nelson. You're going there tonight. What do you think?
I think Rick Scott is going to win that race by probably 53-47 or bigger. It's going to be a bigger margin than people want to think about. Governor Scott is an exceptionally good candidate. He has done amazing work in Florida. His numbers with Hispanics, with African Americans are through the roof compared to where Republicans stand generically. And so I think you're going to see Governor Scott win. He wants this race. He's going to self-fund this race by and large. And he is a hard worker, and he's got a strong record to stand on from his work in Tallahassee. Governor Scott's going to win by 6 points.
Okay, final one, Nevada. Dean Heller trying to hang on. A lot of people thinking this is going to be the one almost sure Democratic pickup. What do you see?
Tough state in Nevada. It has turned much more blue than it has in the past. Dean Heller had a blip on the radar screen when he was against the president's agenda at first. He's now fully on board. That race is going to come down to where the economy is on Election Day, where unemployment is on Election Day, and how things are going in that state specifically. Dean Heller can hang on to that race, but he's going to have to work hard, and he's out doing that.
All right, so predictions today as of July 31st as we get into the August recess. I'm predicting net gain, Republican Senate +5. How about you?
I think a net gain in the Republican Senate of at least 3. I feel very optimistic about 3. It could be 4. And I go back, and I said this last week, John, the sleeper race in the country is the New Jersey Senate race.
Oh,
we have a chance to win that. I know people don't believe me. Look, I've been talking about it now for a couple of weeks, and maybe I shouldn't, but that's an opportunity. I think we're going to win in Indiana. You know, I saw the Koch network now refuses to help Kramer in North Dakota.
What is up with that? What is up with the Koch network?
It's amazing to me, John. You know, in all fairness and full disclosure, I spent 7 years working for that organization, trying to help and trying to do what was right. But they have such a visceral disdain for this president, right? Because he doesn't need their money. He doesn't need their influence. He won't bow to what they want, the globalist nature of some of their trade ideas. And so this president is said today he's disappointed in the Koch network. They should come out. And look, you go back and you look at the Koch network, they're a fraction of the size they used to be. Their major donors are thankful because their businesses are growing every day under the Trump administration. And when they had the opportunity to support the Trump administration in the primary in 2016, they said no. In the general election, they said no. And now they're out actively campaigning against Congressman Kramer in North Dakota to be Senator Kramer. That's disappointing.
Well, they've also said that there's a lot of races they would sit out. They don't back a lot of the president's agenda. And look, I've had American for Prosperity people on my show forever, where both of us are very good friends with Tim Phillips. He had to go to Colorado Springs the other day and make a speech saying that they were not going to get involved in these key races. And you were there a while, right? You were there for
7 years, John.
You were there a 7-year period. I mean, that was your career. That's how we met back then. Very disappointing. And it's like they can't seem to get out of the never Trumper mindset. They keep expecting him to fail. He isn't going to fail. Where do they go from here?
Well, John, it's amazing because if you look at what they were supposed to stand for, which is smaller government, lower taxes, less regulation, you know, by and large, they were big supporters of the Tea Party movement in 2010, right? This president has done everything that agenda was supposed to be about, which is reducing the government burden, giving more economic opportunity, you know, cutting our trade deficits, making sure that we have free trade and fair trade, right? That's what they stood for. They hate this president because he's been successful, right? And when you have success, you have nothing to go against anymore, right? So they have to have a foil. And so to me, it's very disappointing that members of the Koch family and by extension, the Koch network, want to go against this president's agenda because our economy is booming. They had opportunities in the past and they didn't capitalize on it. They had opportunities when Bush was in the White House and they didn't capitalize on it. They had opportunities when Clinton was in the White House. They didn't capitalize. When Obama was in the White House, they didn't capitalize. For the first time in 30 years, they have a president who's coming in and fulfilling the promises that he outlined when he campaigned. And now they're saying it's not good enough. If they want to support Heidi Heitkamp, they're entitled to do that. But they have to remember what that means. She voted against tax cuts for working men and women every single day. She had the opportunity to go out and support the president's tax cuts, the largest tax cuts in our nation's history, and they vote against it, which tells me the Kochs are against tax cuts, and that's shameful.
Okay, we're out of time, but final question. Your boss was Tim Phillips, now their president. He was in Colorado Springs making a speech yesterday. If you had one message to Tim right now, what would it be as your former boss?
Tim, get on the president's agenda. This is a president who is moving our country in the right direction. We need all oars rowing in the same direction. I don't understand what part of this agenda is it he's cut too many regulations? Is it he's created too many jobs? Is it that he has moved the stock market into new territory? Is it that the unemployment rate for Hispanics and African Americans are at the lowest in our nation's history ever recorded? Is it the housing market is taking off? What part of the agenda is it you don't like? Is it that he's standing up for Americans first and that the agenda is a pro-American agenda. Is that what you don't like? I don't understand. Let's articulate it. Let's debate it. Let's get on the stage and have that conversation. I like you, Tim, but you got to get on the president's team.
We're out of time. I want to thank Corey Lewandowski for being with us, former campaign manager Donald Trump for president. Corey, thank you. Hey, get Corey's book. It is so cool. Let Trump, B. Dalton. Bookstore, your favorite bookstore, Amazon.com, wherever it is. Great book, must read. Let Trump be Trump. Corey Lewandowski live at his own studio at the John Fredericks Radio Studio headquarters in Corey Lewandowski Embassy. Thanks for being with us, man.
Thank you, John.